Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone is keeping safe and warm wherever they are. Okay, so we'll start. I'm Nosisa Sibandandlovu. Today I will be presenting on occupational health and safety. So this is quite a very, very broad subject. It focuses on a lot of things. So I decided to focus more on legislation surrounding this and the types of accidents in the workplace, and then lastly, some ways to encourage healthy organizations. Okay. Um, Okay, in this webinar, we'll be discussing the following. So, occupational health and safety background, Department of Labor regarding or surrounding occupational health and safety, and then general duties of employers towards workers, and then the reasons for occupational health and safety, and then general duties of the worker, and then the rights of the worker, health and safety policy and procedure, and the selection of a representative, what health and safety representatives do, and then the health and safety committee, and then the three categories of workplace accidents, and then employee error, equipment insufficiency, procedure insufficiency, and then major health related problems in organizations, and lastly, ways to encourage healthy organizations. Okay, so it is unlikely that any other event could have highlighted the importance of personal protection equipment more effectively than the current lockdown conditions imposed to counter the COVID-19 pandemic. However, in some working environments, such as hospital isolation wards, pharmaceutical companies, and virology labs, such precautions have been a feature of everyday life. The science known as occupational hygiene was developed specifically to investigate potential hazards in workers in all types of employment. Okay, and then the act known as the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which was developed in 1993, Act 85, consists of 50 sections approved by Parliament. The purpose of the Act is to provide for the health and safety of people at work or in connection with the use of plant and machinery. It further provides for the protection of people other than people at work from hazards arising out of or in connection with the activities of people at work. So here we're basically also talking about your community or your surroundings. So if your company emits any gases or that type of thing, then this act also will focus on that. Okay, so Department of Labor, they also take an active part in health and safety, and they've come up with offices around that focus on this as well. So to this end, occupational health and safety inspectors from these offices can carry out inspections and investigations at workplaces. So you might have been audited before, or you might have had an inspector coming into your office randomly, and they can do that. If there is a complaint, or if they find that something doesn't make sense about your company, they are able to come and ask to do an audit. So this, like I mentioned, these inspections are usually planned on the basis of accident statistics, the presence of hazardous substances such as the use of benzene in laundries, or the use of dangerous machinery in the workplace. So unplanned inspections, on the other hand, usually arise from requests or complaints by workers, employers, or members of the public. These complaints or requests are treated confidentially. And then powers of the inspectors. If an inspector finds dangerous or adverse conditions at the workplace, he or she may set requirements to the employer in the following ways. So a prohibition notice. So in the case of threatening danger, an inspector may prohibit a particular action, process, or the use of a machine or equipment by means of a prohibition notice. No person may disregard the contents of such a notice, and compliance must take place with immediate effect. So this is normally the very, very extreme one, where they would even close you down because you're non-compliant. And then contravention notice. If a provision of a regulation is contravened, the inspector may serve a contravention notice on the workers or the employer. A contravention of the act can result in immediate prosecution, but in the case of a contravention of a regulation, the employer may be given the opportunity to correct the contravention within a time limit specified in the notice, which is usually 60 days. So, just like any other audit that Department of Labor would do, they can give you time to correct an issue that they picked up. And then direction notice, where the health and safety measures which the employer has instituted do not satisfactorily protect the health and safety of the workers, the inspector may require the employer to bring out more effective measures. A direction notice which prescribes the corrective measures is then served on the employer. So this is basically when an audit is done and then they pick up certain issues and then they will give you a list and say to you, please correct this following things before workers can come back to the office or that type of thing. And then other powers. To enable the inspector to carry out his or her duties, he or she may enter any workplace or premises where machinery or hazardous substances are being used in question or serve summons on people to appear before him or her. So this is what I spoke to earlier, that they can come in and they can carry out an audit at the workplace. The inspector may require that any documents be submitted to him or her, investigate and make copies of the documents, and demand an explanation about any entries in such documents. Okay, then general duties of employers towards workers. To ensure that these duties are complied with, the employer must identify potential hazards which may be present while work is being done. Something is being produced, processed, used, stored, or transported, and any equipment. So, in this point, you're saying that the employer, the onus is on the employer to identify or to do a risk audit of their own workplace to see what issues there might be and to combat those issues or to mitigate those issues, and then establish the precautionary measures that are necessary to protect his or her workers against the identified hazards. So this is what I'm speaking to. Once you identify the risks associated with your organization, so if you're in the chemical industry and employees deal with chemicals, then you need to ensure that they have protective equipment, they have goggles, for example, and any other hazards that might be there that might affect the employee. The onus is on the employer to make sure that these risks are mitigated. And then provide the necessary information, instructions, training, and supervision while keeping the extent of workers' competence in mind. In other words, what they may do and may not do. So hello, I think I lost connection there. I'll reshare my screen. Okay. So speaking to general duties of employers towards workers, So I was on the point of not permit anyone to carry on with any task unless the necessary precautionary measures have been taken. So this, you need to ensure that your employees know that they need to take certain precautions before they do certain things. An employee needs to wear goggles before they can handle any dangerous chemicals, for example. And then take steps to ensure that every person under his or her control complies with the requirements of the Act. So, normally businesses will put up the Health and Safety Act, and then everyone must be well versed with that. And like I mentioned, the refresher course that employers would sometimes have in their organizations, where everyone knows what they need to comply with. Enforce the necessary control measures in the interest of health and safety. See to it that the work being done and the equipment used is under the general supervision of a worker who has been trained to understand the hazards associated with the work. So that's, for example, the forklift. The employee needs to, so when an employee is using this machinery, they need to have a license to use this machinery, and they need to understand the hazards around that, because we know that the forklift is also quite, it's a cause of a lot of accidents at work, and if not properly used, it can cause death. And then such a worker must ensure that the precautionary measures are implemented and maintained. Okay, then the reasons for occupational health and safety: eliminates possible danger, safeguards employee productivity, means to promote workplace process, protect employee rights, maintain worker health, eliminates time loss. And then the worker also has a duty towards health and safety. It is a duty of the worker to take care of his or her own health and safety, as well as that of other people who may be affected by his or her actions or negligence to act. This includes playing at work. Many people have been injured and even killed owing to horseplay in the workplace, and that is considered a serious contravention. Cooperate with the employer where the Act imposes a duty of requirements on the worker. Give information to an inspector from the Department of Labor if he or she should require it. Carry out any lawful instruction which the employer or authorized person prescribes regarding health and safety. Comply with the rules and procedures that the employer gives him or her. Wear the prescribed safety clothing or use the prescribed safety equipment where it is required. Report unsafe or unhealthy conditions to the employer or health and safety representative as soon as possible. If he or she is involved in an accident that may influence his or her health or cause an injury, report that incident to the employer and authorized person or the health and safety representative as soon as possible, but no later than by the end of the shift. So basically, this means you can't wait until 3 days later to report an incident that happened or an injury. So as soon as something happens, you need to report this so that you can be attended to. Okay, so rights of the worker. So the rights of the worker is the right to have information, the right to participate in inspections, the right to comment on legislations and make representations, right not to be victimized, and right to appeal. So this is the employer or employee. They can appeal any decisions made by an inspector after an audit. And then health and safety policy and procedure, selection of a representative. So all employers must have a health and safety policy in place. An occupational health and safety chart must be put up in the workplace, and it must be visible to all employees. And then what are health and safety representatives? They are full-time workers nominated or elected and designated in writing by the employer after the employer and workers consulted one another and reached an agreement about who will be health and safety representative. They must at least be familiar with the circumstances and conditions at that part of the workplace for which they are designated. Agreement must also be reached on the period of office and functions of the health and safety representative, and must be settled amongst the employer and the workers. So you have to ensure that if you're choosing a health and safety representative, you do not choose any random person. You need to choose someone who is going to who understands the workplace, who understands the type of hazards that are in the workplace, and is able to address them accordingly. So how then do you choose your health and safety representative? So there's one health and safety representative to a workplace consisting of more than 20 workers. So in the case of shops and offices, one representative must be designated for every 100 workers or part thereof. In the case of other workplaces, one representative must be designated for every 50 workers or part thereof. Health and safety audits. Representatives may check the effectiveness of health and safety measures by means of a health and safety audits. So you need to be able to identify potential dangers within this audit. So you need to, this is what I spoke about earlier, in that you need to have a risk assessment of the organization or of your office place, and you need to then investigate incidents that happen in the office and try and combat them from happening again. So normally what happens is, if something happens, when incident happens and then it needs to be investigated, then you need to write a report on that for filing to ensure that you come up with ways to mitigate the risks that cause the accident. And then make representations. Representatives may make representations regarding the safety of the workplace to the employer or the health and safety committee, or where the representations are unsuccessful, to an inspector. And then inspections. So the health and safety representatives normally have inspections. They will go around the office and check that the cabling is okay. Also, simple things like charging of your laptop. Will this cause a potential hazard? If someone walks through, will they not trip? So issues like that, they can then do those types of audits so that they try and combat those risks as well. And then, what is the purpose of a health and safety committee? Members meet in order to initiate, promote, maintain, and review measures of ensuring the health and safety of workers. So normally the health and safety committees will meet once an audit has been done, and then so normally they meet like twice a year or quarterly, and then they discuss some of the risks that are there and how they can mitigate those risks, and they can come up with ways to teach employees on the different health and safety measures in the organization. And then when must health and safety committees be established? At least one committee must be established when 2 or more representatives are designated. And then, of how many members does a health and safety committee comprise? The employer determines the number of committee members based on the following. If only one committee has been established for a workplace, all the representatives must be members of that committee. If 2 or more committees have been established for a workplace, which is mostly for the very big companies, each representative must be a member of at least one of those committees. Okay, and then 3 categories of workplace accidents: employee error, equipment insufficiency, and then procedure insufficiency. Employee error, mistakes such as misjudgments of situations, assuming a situation is safer than it actually is. So you'll find sometimes an employee will cross in front of a forklift and will assume that the forklift is far and nothing will happen, and then actually something does happen. And then distractions from other employees. So assuming you're using a very dangerous machinery, and then someone comes and starts telling you something, and then next thing your hand is cut off or something like that. Knowingly using defective equipment or machinery. So basically, you've got machinery, you know this machine is not working properly, but you're still using it. Knowingly ignoring safety rules and regulations, for example, using a cell phone while driving, or not keeping a safe distance when a forklift is in use, not wearing a harness when one should be, not wearing safety equipment. So, for example, you're not wearing your mask at the office, you get COVID, and then that type of thing. And then smoking in a no smoking area, and so on. And then equipment insufficiency, use of inappropriate equipment, safety devices being removed or not operating, lack of protective clothing, failure to perform preventative maintenance, and then improper operation. So a simple safety precaution, wear goggles, and then you remove your goggles, and then you get acid or something in your eyes, and then that's a health and safety incident, and of which it's something that has been told to you as an employee and you're not doing. And then procedure inefficiency, inappropriate procedure for handling material, failure of procedure of eliciting warning of hazard. This means that if there is a hazard around the workplace, temporary or long term, signs must be put up to warn people of potential hazards. A simple sign as a picture below is a very good example. When you're at the mall and then you see this caution wet floor, it's a health and safety precaution. You may slip, you may hurt yourself, so follow the procedure that has been given. And then major health related problems in organizations. So skin diseases caused by work exposure to chemicals, plants, and so on. Respiratory conditions, hazardous biological agents, fumes, and dust. So basically inhaling those things. And then poisoning. So you go and have a blood test, and then there's high concentration of toxins in your bloodstream because of the chemicals and the type of work that you do. And then repetitive motion disorder. So the use of a mouse all day, you're clicking all day. For example, with data capturers, they're always clicking, and they're always doing the same thing over and over again, and that can be a major problem eventually. And then back disorders. So this also goes now into office ergonomics, where you need to ensure that your employees have the correct chairs, the correct desk height, the correct height of chairs, the correct mouse, the correct balancing, the correct laptop stand, and that type of thing. And then lastly, stress, depression, and anxiety. So there's so many more, but I just gave a few examples of some of the major problems. So stress and depression, anxiety, I think are the most prominent nowadays as well because of the situation at the moment. So employers just need to be careful of those things. And then lastly, just some of the ways to encourage a healthy organization. So employee wellness days. I understand that now it's quite difficult to do wellness days the way we used to do them, but you may still have some online where you still teach people about how best to take care of themselves, how best to handle stress, and that type of thing. And then also sufficient job training. So a lot of organizations have come up with new job specs because things have changed and some people are working mostly from home. So you need to then kind of do your job specs in such a way that accommodates that aspect. And then effective job performance systems. So you need to manage your employees so that they understand where they are and what they're doing within the organization. And then effective reward programs is also a very good way. It doesn't always have to amount to money. It can be simple things like recognizing employees and that type of thing. Family and work-life balance. So basically, you need to ensure that your employees are in a position to be balanced in terms of their work and in terms of their home life. And then time to rest as well. Give your employees time to rest. As much as you're working from home, it's quite hectic. So give them time off, and then allow them to, you can even implement flexible work time so that you ensure that your employees are well rested. And then I also put in a little picture that also goes in, like, share leadership, provide leadership, build community, check on your employees often, check that they're doing well. Sometimes people may not put up their hand and then tell you anything. So you need to constantly check as an employer, and then also develop people. Training is difficult at the moment, but then you can still have stuff, webinars, you can still have stuff that you do online once in a while, and just have people develop still. And then also just value people. Don't forget to thank people for everything that they're doing, for pulling together, and that type of thing. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we will close now. Thank you very much for attending. Hope to see you next time. Thank you.